Hi, everyone. If you were coming back from fall break, I hope you had a very restful and relaxing fall break and you're able to start this week recharged. And if you're just now going on fall break, I hope that you have a wonderful week and that you, again, get a lot of rest and are recharged so that way you can come back from fall break and hit the ground running. So I just wanted to make a quick little video just to say hi. Y'all are doing an amazing job. Oh my goodness, your poetry projects were fantastic. And what really struck me is how a lot of you said you didn't feel like you were creative or you didn't think you could write poetry. These were amazing, guys. And I really, really appreciate everyone describing their exigence and their process. Everyone did fantastic. You really, really did. You blew it out of the water. I was so impressed. Because this class is not supposed to be teaching you like the nitty gritty things about poetry or short story or drama. Y'all studied that through middle school and high school. You've got it. The whole point of this class is just to show you what different types of literature are out there and hopefully help you to grow and appreciate all forms of literature. You might not like it, and that's fine. That is totally fun. We're about to start the graphic novel Fahrenheit 451, which I know a lot of you probably read in early high school, potentially. And it's not everyone's favorite book, but I just wanted to show you a different way of telling it. So if you haven't gotten your graphic novel copy of Fahrenheit 451, please make sure you do so. I will post a link. Not a link, a picture in D2L, just so that way you make sure you get the right one, right version of it. So you have about a week to get that before we get started on that particular book. But again, poetry projects, amazing, 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 amazing. I'm so proud of y'all. I'm proud of the work you put into it. I am proud of just how willing and how deep you were willing to be and vulnerable in your work. Not a lot of students are willing to do that. So I personally really appreciate it and thank you for your hard work on that. It was awesome. I really enjoyed like as a teacher, I actually like grading. Some assignments more than others, but this was probably one of my favorite batches of assignments to grade in a really long time. So thank you for that. I am catching up on grading. I did go to the beach over fall break and I forgot how time limiting, I guess might be the right word, traveling with an infant is. It's been a while. So my second youngest is about to turn 15 and our youngest is about to turn 1 this week. They both have birthdays this week. So I apologize for being just a little bit behind on grading, but hopefully now that we're back into routine and back into school and no one is sick, knock on wood, I should be able to knock out some of your assignments over the next few days. So that way your grade will be updated as soon as possible. So just a few notes or a few comments about this past week going into this week. Because remember, I gave you 2 weeks to complete these assignments. We're talking a lot about social issues. And one of the reasons why I picked the stories for this particular week is to show you that some of these issues that we are talking about today, namely mental health, women's health, poverty, we're still talking about this, and this was happening back in the day. The birthmark especially kind of shows obsession with appearance and then also unhealthy relationships because the main character and her husband have a very volatile relationship. It's not a healthy relationship in any way, form, or fashion because he becomes very obsessed about her birthmark and she in turns becomes very obsessed with making him happy. And so it's to show you that many of the things that we're discussing today as being issues in our society, they have been around for a really long time. Now they've changed and we have evolved and we've grown, especially when you look at the yellow wallpaper and the video that goes along with discussions, which I think a few of you might find just a little bit shocking. It might be fall under the category of TMI, but I think it's really, really important to know that that's how women were viewed back in the day. They were very much viewed as inferior, weak-minded. Charlotte Gilman Perkins, she was actually subjected to a rest cure after her daughter was born and she developed postnatal depression. And some of the rest cures would last for weeks, if not a month or more, where the women were not allowed to do anything. They had to lay in bed. Like the character in the book, she's at least allowed to walk around the room. Um, she is limited. Like they wind up taking away her pen and paper. I mean, it's but this was something that women were actually subjected to, especially after the birth of a child. Now we recognize it as postnatal depression, baby blues, whatever you want to call it. But back then, they didn't really know how to properly treat mental illness. Like, if you ever watch any of those ghost hunting shows, one of the places that they go to all the time are the old mental asylums. And a lot of times, families, if a woman was seen to be bringing shame upon their family, maybe she went on a date with a man that they didn't approve of, maybe she kissed him without being engaged, or whatever the reason was, women were often put into mental institutions for sexual instability. And so I think it's really important to kind of know the context of when she was writing The Yellow Wallpaper, and understand that, yeah, this is something that happened frequently. Actually, too, if any of you read Jane Eyre, if you remember correctly, Jane Eyre became the governess for a family where the wife was actually like locked in the attic because she had suffered from severe postnatal depression after the birth of her child. There just weren't any treatments for it, any effective treatments anyway, back in the 1800s, early 1900s. And the author is just an amazing woman. She was she's an early feminist writer, obviously, but she also pushed the limit of a lot of things. She actually did commit suicide, but not because she was depressed. She developed breast cancer, and she famously said in her suicide note, "I choose chloroform over the cancer." And so she did. She overdosed on chloroform. Well, I can't really overdose on chloroform, but she inhaled a large quantity of chloroform fumes and passed away, because then again, there weren't any effective treatments for things like breast cancer. And so she took what she felt like, again, this is an issue in today's society, is if you were terminally ill, should you have the right to take your own life? Again, this is a societal issue that is being discussed today, and it was happening back even in the turn of the 20th century. So I hope you enjoy. I mean, it's a different writing, both The Yellow Wallpaper and The Birthmark. They were written in the 1800s, and so the language is a little bit different. Probably nothing that y'all haven't dealt with before, especially if you did read The Scarlet Letter, or a whole plethora of books that you probably had to read from this time period. But I do hope that you can take a look at them and kind of see them and think about them. Let me back up and say, I don't like necessarily to try to put modern ideals on old texts. I think that that's a big mistake that people try to make when they discuss literature. But I do think it's important to look at older texts and see how we have progressed as a society. Have we made any positive changes? Are we still the same? Are we growing? And I think that that's very important to make note of when you're kind of reading these things. It's like when we're reading The Birthmark, do couples become obsessive over another person in the relationship's flaws? Are we very obsessed with beauty? I think that all these things are extremely important to talk about. What's beauty anyway? How would you define that? If you ever want to see something interesting, is like read up on like what trends were and how they progressed. Up until about the 1960s, people liked a plumper woman. I mean, that's just kind of what was considered beautiful. And then in the 60s, there was a model named Twiggy that came along, and she was very thin. And then after that, all the models became very thin. And now we're kind of swinging back the other way, where we kind of are going away from extreme thinness. It's like you can't win. So honestly, and it's not just women, men face this too. Like, what is considered an ideal man? What is masculinity? These are questions that we're all kind of facing in today's world. But And then we go back to Langston Hughes. Remember, we read his poem earlier, The Landlord, The Ballad of the Landlord. And this one is one of his short stories, Thank You, Ma'am. And it's about a boy living in poverty who tries to steal a woman's purse. And it goes into this whole thing of, well, why was he wanting to steal her purse? How did she react to that? Like, how should we treat children? Now remember, because this is a child, this isn't an adult, so we have to keep that in context. But how does poverty affect children when they want things that they can't have? And you have to realize that this was also being written in a time before we had things like angel trees or candle wishes or things like that, where we had programs set up to kind of help. There were programs, but not to the extent that they are today, to help children living in poverty not feel so different than their peers. And so, try to put yourself in the woman's shoes. It's like, what would you do if a child tried to steal your purse because they wanted a popular pair of shoes? And it becomes very, very obvious that home life is not very good. I taught in an inner city school for several years, and I can tell you a lot of my students that maybe acted all big and bad or did certain things like stealing or lying or getting into fights, 90% of them, I would say, had issues going on at home, that either absentee parents or drugs or something going on. And it's not like it was like, I don't want you to think that I am putting a label on every single child, because it wasn't every single child. We had some fantastic, wonderful, wonderful families, but I just noticed that the ones that were like in trouble quite a bit, they usually had something going on in their home lives. That was really sad and heartbreaking for me as a teacher to witness. So I think that story is extremely important to tell, and so I hope you enjoy it. But again, y'all are doing an absolutely fantastic job. We are coming up on midterm grade, so I don't have a midterm assignment, so to say. I like the class to kind of progress organically and not have like this pressure, we must have a midterm, whatever, because our semester actually started a week late this year. Normally we start that, not the 29th. This is one of the latest that we've ever started. So don't worry about a midterm, but midterm grades are due to MTSU soon. So if you are missing something, do try to get that turned in as soon as possible. I'm going to try to have the grade book completely updated by probably Thursday of this week, just in preparation for when midterm grades are due. So if you are missing something, or if I notice that there's a lot missing, I will be reaching out to you this week. So look for a text, an email, phone call, something from me. If I have everything from you and you're doing fine, don't worry about it. Going back to your poetry project, I think everyone got really great grades. But just so you know, my policy is, and I didn't put this in the syllabus, but this is just the way I roll, is that I believe that writing is fluid and that you should always have the opportunity to improve yourself. And so if you're not happy with your poetry project grade, you have a week to revise it. I am a firm believer that, writers make mistakes. As a writer, I have a master's degree in writing and I make mistakes. One of my husband's greatest joys is when I write something, he's like, ooh, let me look at it, because he's looking to see if I've made a mistake, because I do. One, because I can type almost faster than I can think sometimes. And so I'll misspell a word or I'll forget a comma or something like that. Mistakes happen in writing. I always say 50% of good writing happens in the editing and proofreading process. And so if you have made a mistake and I pointed it out, just go back and fix it. You can earn that credit back, because that's how writing works in the real world. All these books and things that we're reading in class, these are not the first drafts of what people wrote. They went through revisions. They went through teams of editors and proofreaders and everything before they were published. And so I think you as writers deserve the same consideration when it comes to your own writing. First draft might not have been perfect, but let's work on it and make it perfect, or as close to perfect as it can be. Anyway, if you have any questions or concerns, just let me know. Again, thank you. Y'all have been just such a great online class, and I appreciate every single one of you.